Good afternoon, friends. Hope you're enjoying this beautiful Sunday afternoon. Getting ready for spring here. It's a beautiful day. Just wanted to spend a little bit of time with you today and talk to you about a very important matter. I'm not sure if you've heard about this or not in the past. And if not, then I want to make sure that you have the information you need to take whatever action is required. So anyway, I wanted to start off with, this thought that's been in the back of my mind most of the day. And I'll tell you why. My wife and I were over babysitting our granddaughter, one of the amazing pleasures that God has blessed us with. And so we spent about 3 hours or so with her. My son-in-law and my daughter needed to go out and run some errands. And we always have a great time spending time with Lennon. Anyway, we were working on a puzzle, and they have pretty big pieces, and she's very good at puzzles. So anyway, we completed this puzzle, and I could see the wheels turning. She already had another idea as to what she was going to do. So she thought of taking the big pieces of the puzzle, and she asked my wife to put some tape around it and have the puzzle piece on the bottom of her foot. So my wife did that, and she always has lots of tape. She's great with crafts and coloring and designs. She blows me away. But anyway, so we're not really sure where she's going with this, but we're kind of going along. And then she gets up and starts tap dancing. And she says, "Look, Vovo, look, Vovo." That's the term used for grandpa and grandma in Portuguese. Vovô for grandpa and vovó for grandma. "Look, I'm tapping, and I'm tap dancing." And she's doing that, and I'm thinking, holy crap. I mean, it sounded good, right onto the hardwood floor. It sounded like she had tap shoes on. I don't know where she picked up this idea, but it was so simple what she did. And it got me thinking about the WSIB. Back in 1915, when they first started, the basic principles were very, very clear. And I talked about this in my first video, maybe second, as to what it was supposed to be. And it was simple. Employers gave or workers gave up their right to sue an employer in the event that they had a catastrophic injury and they couldn't go back to work, or an event that there was a death, or for some time to heal and covering of medical treatments and all that, so that he or she could return to work healthy and so on. So very basic and very simple. But over the years, the WSIB has continuously come up with ways to try and just screw the injured worker, just nickel and dime the injured worker to death. And in the last 30 years since I've been involved in dealing with WSIB, I haven't seen one single policy or one single piece of legislation that was there to give the worker some power, to give the worker the benefit of doubt, to be supportive without having to completely humiliate the worker and make them feel useless, especially when it comes to feeding their families. And this latest one is no different. So back in 2014, they came up with this brilliant idea, and it's referred to as the secret policy, that they were going to, for individuals who had been assessed a NEL, so a non-economic loss award, and that was as a result of recognizing that individual ended up having a permanent impairment as a result of their accident and the effects of the accident. And so they would award a non-economic loss award, and there was an assessment, and most of you have probably gone through the process. The NEL award is peanuts. It's not there to really make anybody rich or to even make you feel like, I got something for this injury. It's nothing. I call it's an insult to injury, really. because most people really want to be able to be compensated for while they're recovering, and they want to be able to pay their bills, and they want to be able to pay their medical treatment without having to beg the WSIB to approve treatment, so that they can get back to work. That's what everybody wants. People, they follow one of two streams. They either go into business for themselves and they work to build their business, or they decide they're going to work for somebody else. And whatever stream you go into, at the end of the day, all you want to do is earn enough money to pay your bills, look after your family, and hopefully have a good quality of life. Nobody sets out to get rich. But anyway, so this whole Nell thing for me, it was always a big insult. And the process is degrading in a lot of ways. But anyway, so they decided that they were going to consider a permanent impairment and deduct that permanent impairment from the Nell rating itself. And listen, I mean, a lot of people have a permanent impairment from a previous injury or condition. We do have injuries that can happen outside of work. Some of them may or may not result in restrictions from work. And if they do, then there are limitations that are recognized. But what the WSIB wanted to do was reduce the overall Nell assessment. Let's say for a back injury, for example, if the person had a previous back injury, they wanted to reduce that, but not in a proper manner by looking at the two separately before considering how that pre-existing condition impacted the injury. And so they would just reduce the non-economic loss by a significant percentage, even when the pre-existing condition was asymptomatic and didn't hinder the worker from performing their job in any way. So they started doing this for claims after when they implemented this secret policy in November of 2014. And so that prompted a lawsuit by an injured worker, and it was then looked at and constituted as a class action lawsuit. And when it was submitted to the Ontario Superior Court of Ontario, it was quashed by the judge. So they appealed, and they appealed to the Ontario Court of Appeal, and this was in, I believe it was early 2017. The matter was reviewed, and the certification of that class action lawsuit took place, meaning that they would be able to move ahead. The WSIB didn't like that because for many reasons, but one of them was that if they proceeded ahead and lost, that would create a massive precedent that would really hinder their overall plan, which is to pay as less as they possibly can for the injured worker and nickel and dime them to death. So that reversal caused the WSIB to take proactive action because they couldn't, when looking at the possibility of moving ahead and losing, was not an outcome that they wanted to consider. So they went and reversed that whole thing. They came out with a memo in December of 2017 as to how they were going to go back as far back as 2012 and re-adjudicate all of those decisions that had been previously made where this significant reduction of an Nell award was being made due to a pre-existing permanent impairment. And then they said they were going to review a bunch of them, and they were going to let everybody know what the outcome was, and blah, 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 and yada, yada, yada. At the end of the day, I really don't believe shit that they come out with, and whatever they put on paper, you got to double check it, triple check it, and just make sure that you dot the I's and cross the T's. It's just a general good thing to do. Excuse me. A sip of wine, it's a good thing I like to do on Sunday afternoons. I usually do the cooking, Sunday dinner, and usually there's a little bit of vino for me and a little bit of vino for the whatever I happen to be preparing. Growing up back home on Pico, we had a vineyard, and so we spent the summers making wine, and I kind of got into it as a little boy, and got used to drinking wine as young as 12. Now, my mom would only give us a little bit, but then that grew into a little bit more, and now I enjoy my vino on Sunday afternoons. But anyway, I'm still coherent to be able to explain some of these things to you because they're important. There's a likelihood that you may have heard about this from either the WSIB because this affected your own claim, or you heard it through the grapevine. And if you haven't, then you're hearing about it here. And if this fits your profile, then we have created a process with WSIBsettlements.com to help you address it. And on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to post a video, which will be probably about maybe 10 minutes long, which just basically talking about the process itself, so you get a good understanding. We've created the whole thing, so you don't really have to do anything except just use our process to make sure that if you're in that category of claims, that your case is properly looked at. The one thing that struck out for me in this whole thing is that whether or not they went back and gave an extra 10, 15% and attached it back to the original nail or through an assessment process, that would result in really very little money. I'm not trying to minimize how important money is to injured workers because every little penny counts. I get it. I understand that. But the real thing is the decisions that they made by considering your pre-existing condition in terms of your employability. So let's say that you were given a 25% now for your low back. And because you had a pre-existing condition, let's say they reduced that by half, so 12.5%. Then they're looking at you're probably involved with labor market reentry services or work reintegration, as they call it now, and you may be having difficulty. You may not be able to do work on a regular basis. And the WSIB looks at that and says, well, it's your pre-existing condition that's really becoming a significant factor in your employability. Really? If that pre-existing condition was asymptomatic when you had your injury and it didn't affect your ability to work and perform your job, how the hell is it considered post-injury? It's bullshit. Like, at the end of the day, it might be a crude word, but it is. It's bullshit. That's all it is. That shouldn't be the case at all. But this is part of a systemic issue with WSIB, where they will create policies or come up with these creative decisions that may or may not have any backing by legislation, and in a lot of cases goes against their own policy to try and minimize how much compensation they give to the worker. And then, with a slap in the face, they give employers $1.5 billion in rebates. Hang on a second. Let's continue to kick the shit out of the injured worker and give money at the same time, right? Give money back to employers. That adds insult to injury. But this is what they do. And it always pisses me off every time I talk about it, because it shouldn't be that way. Workers should not have to launch one appeal after another and launch lawsuits and look to every possible way to be able to survive and look after their families, while these people continue to do stuff to manipulate how much you get and who gets to treat you and how much treatment do you get for a condition, what type of treatment, all of these things. So the only way to fight them is to use their own rules and their own internal structure, how they operate against them. That's the only way that you're going to be able to do it. Talking about it in support groups and all of these things, you know what? It's good. It's good to be able to talk about things, but that doesn't put money on the table. It doesn't put food on the table. And they don't really care how many protests there are and how many support groups there are and how many letters are sent in by whatever. They don't care. For them, the way they look at it is you're a nuisance. You're out here in the peripheral, and as long as you're doing that and doing your protesting and your picketing and all that stuff, they don't care, because that doesn't change how they operate, and it doesn't change laws. At least I haven't seen it in the last 30 years. But what does change is when you know how to use their system and their own internal structure, and you make them accountable for every single decision that they make. That's one of the reasons why my firm was so successful in settling 80 to 85% of all cases without going to appeals. We did that. We were very good at it. There's a video that's going to be coming out that I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to talk about the system and how you can use that system to cause them to take pause and deal with it. Because at the end of the day, they have to. If you put it in their faces and you use their system and their internal process, they will look at your issues. I promise you that. So that video is going to come out probably in a couple of weeks. But in the meantime, I'm back on Tuesday at 7 p.m. To give you some very real tools to be able to address this particular situation if you are one of those cases that was affected. In other words, you received a non-economic loss from 2012 onwards, and you had a pre-existing condition that they used to reduce your non-economic loss award. And so from that time to date, if you fall into that category and you haven't been contacted and nobody's done anything about it, then chances are it's important that you have them look at it, and we have the tools to help you do that. So friends, thank you for taking this time to listen. And again, please don't forget to subscribe. That's the only way that I can continue to grow this channel. And please share it with others. Chances are you know at least one person or one person who knows another who's had a workplace injury and probably has had issues with the WSIB. I know that a lot of people give up because they hear these stories. I'm not going to apply, or I'm not going to appeal because I'm just going to end up like another person. And don't. That's the worst thing that can happen. If you're injured, you have to apply, and if they turn you down, you have to appeal. I've handled many cases over the years where the person came to me and said, I had this injury 20 years ago. I didn't do anything about it because I knew they weren't going to accept it. A lot of my friends, they wouldn't accept theirs, and it's only gotten worse. And now here they are 20 years later, trying to get entitlement for a claim that took place 20 years ago. Now, granted, in many cases, we were able to get entitlement. There is a process that we do to make sure that that happens, but it's much easier. If you have a claim, launch your claim. If they deny it, so be it. There's ways to continue to keep that going, because you may need it 20 years down the road, and you may not have it if you don't do something about it now. So yes, please share it with others. We're also looking for someone to do our interview to post on our channel. So if you know somebody, or if you've had a situation with WSIB that's really had a very negative impact on your life, we would love to hear about it. We'd love to do the interview and put it on our website. And if there's topics that you would like me to talk about, please send me an email at the email address in the description, and I'll get back to you with a response. On Wednesdays, I do Q&A. So if you email me your questions, then I do those on Wednesdays. And if there's a lot, then I'll carry them over and do it again on a Thursday. So anyway, and you don't want to miss that. So subscribing, that way you ensure that you're going to get a notification every time that I come out with a new video. So I'm going to let you get back to your Sunday and enjoy the rest of your day with your family. I'm going to be doing that myself. Again, thanks a lot for tuning in, and have a wonderful Sunday afternoon. Take care, friends.